All right, bro. So today we're talking about a story taken from John chapter 8 about a woman who was caught in adultery in the very act. And the story is basically that, she gets dragged before Jesus and they're trying to trap him. And they're like, man, Moses said we should stone people when we catch them in the act, when they commit adultery. What do you say? And then, Jesus said something that's echoed by people even who aren't Christian. He without sin, let him cast the first stone. And then they let her go because they're all ashamed, convicted by their own conscience that, oh, bro, that's me, called out. So then everyone leaves, and then Jesus doesn't condemn her. He sets her free and tells her, go and sin no more. Familiar story?
What, being caught in adultery or caught... Oh, man. Bro, this is bringing me back to my... back to the old days, man. Yeah, too many stories like that, shamefully. But, yeah, man, I've been caught out way too many times. Way too many times.
So you can relate. Bro, me too. And even in the very act, I suppose the point here is resonating with not just adultery, but, caught texting another girl, caught flirting with another girl, caught watching porn, whatever the story is, when you get caught in the act, bro, it's like,
Bro, it's like you feel so guilty, but you feel so shameful, it's embarrassing. It's like, who are they going to tell? Who are they going to tell? Who's going to find out? What's my reputation
going to be? Phone out and start taking photos.
Oh, man. Like, all of these things go through your head. Yeah. So I can imagine, how this woman would have been feeling thrown at the feet of Jesus. Everyone would have been around as well. You could imagine it was in public. It could have been, people were watching. People would have been like, whoa, her whole secrets have been exposed to everyone.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, obviously this is a religious community, so you would think, people would be more brutal outside, but this is church folk. And, imagine, okay, it was bad enough when we were out. Now put yourself in church now.
Ooh.
With you preaching, me preaching, everyone knows, you're up the front always, and then caught in the act.
Bro, if you got found out that you were having an affair,
oh my goodness,
you would almost be crucified by the church, bro, man.
I need the ground to swallow me up, disappear right now.
But it's funny though, sometimes as Christians we can be the most judgmental.
Totally.
People who are outside of the church who have nothing to do with God can sometimes be more sympathetic, more merciful than those inside the church.
Seriously. And I suppose, for a lot of people, the reason they don't go to these places is because of the fear of the shame that it brings, So even though that's good in one way, but it means that, the motive isn't totally out of a love for Jesus. It's more a fear of being shamed, the thought of it. Even for me, it's like, bro, I couldn't live with myself, my children, my wife, having to deal with such a scandal. I think of Ravi Zacharias, it's like, man, big name in the world, and then comes out that he had all these sex scandals. It's like, bro, how embarrassing. Presidents, so really, and I'd be deserving. Like, I'd want my wife to come punch me, just come and just give me one, and it's over, because I'm so guilty.
I'm sure she would, man.
Just punish me, no escape, bro. Yeah. So I suppose in this situation, she's totally shamed, and obviously maybe the guy, maybe he's not from the local congregation. So then he can't be dragged in front of everyone, or maybe for whatever reason he's not there. Maybe he's the famous name, and she's just the lady in the church, and she gets pulled before Jesus, and it's like she was caught in the act. So, like you're saying, she's probably thinking, oh my goodness, filled with shame, filled with guilt. And even the thought that, why don't you bring the guy here? We should be both here. She doesn't even say that. She's not even trying to get him stoned because she's just overwhelmed with shame. She's got nothing to say.
Yeah, and you think about how bad it is when you have to go before someone that you've cheated on, or someone's bringing that up against you, and how the shame and the embarrassment. But imagine going before Jesus, the creator of the universe. It's like, oh man, that's even worse. Like I'm thinking in my own life, if I had to go face to face with Jesus about the things that I've done right now, like, man, that would be 10 times worse, I feel, than anyone else, seeing and hearing about it.
Peter, when Jesus looked at him after he denied him, was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can't cover up, you can't make it sound like, oh, but, I was just a bit tired, or I don't know what I was thinking. He knows for real that you plotted, you schemed, and you totally enjoyed the whole experience, So you can't cover up. He sees it as it is,
And what's interesting, like you said, he can see the heart, right? So he knows our intentions, what we were thinking, the build up to all of it. It wasn't just we could say, oh, sort of just fell into it, but really was predetermined. But the way that he answers the woman is completely different to how someone would answer someone if they knew that they were planning to do this evil or do something wrong against them. He's not condemning her, but he actually shows her mercy.
Bro.
Even though he had seen the plans of her heart, he knew what she was doing, what she was thinking, how many times she may have done this in the past. Secrets that may have never been told to anyone else.
Man.
But he knew the heart, but yet he still showed her mercy. Man, that's
serious
deep, man.
Stuff, bro. I'm thinking, if I put myself in her shoes, it's like, oh my goodness, But somehow, subconsciously, if I put someone else in the church in her shoes, I'm not as sympathetic.
You're like, yeah, get them.
Get them.
Stone them.
Because, I'm thinking of how gossip spreads, You think, wow, if someone else was there, especially someone who you really don't, someone who you don't love as much as others, because that's just the reality. You don't, there's people that you don't love as you do others, or someone who's not so nice to you, looks at you funny. If that person is caught, part of you is like, yes, serves you right, serves you right. And that's where everyone else is there, that, okay, I didn't get caught, you got caught and you deserve it. You deserve it. And name and shame them, put them out and make sure everyone in the church knows. Somehow there's just less sympathy, less grace, when it's someone, especially someone who you have no respect for, who you don't desire their love or respect. You tend to be more unsympathetic, more brutal.
Yeah, I think, like you said, if I had been in that situation, it would have been easy for me to be like, oh yeah, get that person because they deserve it. And it's not until you're in the situation where you're the one who needs the grace, you're the one who needs forgiveness, you're the one who needs the mercy, is until you really understand, like, man, how much do I really need this? And then you put yourself in the situation, man, I've been so condemning to others in the past, but it's not until you really need that. And, I've been in that situation myself, I've been caught cheating before, and it's like, people never forget it.
Totally.
They just don't forget it. And it's like your whole life or anything you ever do was plagued by that one thing that you've done before. So people will just look at me as a cheater, and it's like, even if my life has now changed and I'm a new person in Christ, I'm still looked upon as that cheater from years ago, and it's like, it still stays with me. But the good thing is that God doesn't look at me like that.
That's right.
And that's the great thing. But if that person needed, forgiveness or mercy, then they would be in my position thinking, man, I wish I could have it.
Absolutely.
But it's always different when you're on the other shoes.
Absolutely.
It's easier to condemn, a lot easier.
Absolutely. And especially, when you get caught, there's nothing to say. It's like caught in the act. It's like,
you can't defend yourself, man.
You can't defend yourself. Guilty as, and like, I think I'm married, and I'm thinking you're engaged. I'm thinking, imagine being caught out cheating in this situation. Like, it would be almost unbearable, to think, wow, how am I going to look my wife in the eyes, my children, just the guilt that comes with it. And like, I'm expecting to be kicked out of the house. My wife just won't even look at me. It's like, just get out. That's really, I'm picturing. It's like, get out, And then imagine her forgiving me. Imagine being forgiven, bro, after such an act. which is what Jesus did. He did what no one else was doing in that moment, and yet what was the longing of her heart, because she was guilty, but with anyone, that regret, when you get caught, there's a genuine feeling of, oh, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Like, bro, how could I do this? Oh, I'm never going to do this again. So you really are guilty, condemned, but you really long for mercy, and I can just imagine if my wife said, look, I forgive you. We love you. We're going to come around you. We know that, bro.
That's unheard of, man.
I'll be in tears, man. I'll be jumping through the roof, because I know I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
I really know I don't deserve it, and me sleeping in the car, sleeping outside, it's like, yeah, I deserve that punishment. Punch me in the face, I deserve it. But to be forgiven.
So would you say that you appreciate that a lot more then?
Far more.
Yeah.
Far more, because I'd want to be hit. I want to suffer because I'm seeing what I've put her through, So then to be forgiven, it's like, wow, I'm so undeserving. I'd even be afraid of being forgiven. It's like, oh, punish me, I deserve it. And she's like, no, I forgive you. That would cut me up terribly, actually. Yeah. So what's interesting, though, is, obviously I do want forgiveness. But it's interesting that Jesus didn't excuse adultery, because that's one thing, that sure, you might want mercy. You want people in the church to treat you nicely. All of these nice things. But actually, she did deserve punishment, and the person who she did it with did deserve punishment, So I think it's important to realize that, if you think of the pain that such an act causes, the ruined families, the shame, the bad reputation on churches, you think of, all the scandals, especially for people with big names, It makes God look bad, it makes the church look bad. The family has a terrible reputation. All the kids that are hurt, and I've witnessed it. It must be known that it's a bad thing. It's like, we're not trying to water down the terrible thing that it is to cheat, and to commit adultery, because I would hate it to be done to me,
Yeah, it's not that Jesus was saying that this was nothing big, it didn't really matter. It was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
It was a massive deal. And, she was deserving of death, really. But, yeah, the mercy that was shown was something that was unheard of at the time.
Totally.
And, yeah, I think, like you said, once you've seen that you're truly forgiven, and you see the cost of it, and how it's affected other people's lives.
Totally.
And what your one act has caused a ripple effect. When you see that, but then you're not condemned, and you don't have to pay any price for what you did, you're like, wow.
It changes you.
Man, how can you ever do that again, seeing what it's caused, but the way that you were forgiven when you didn't deserve it, man? Like, it's how can it not affect your heart, How can it not change your mind, change your thoughts? It's amazing, man.
And I think that's precisely it, that it says the goodness of God leads us to repentance. And like you just said, how could it not change you? You'd never want to do it again. That's why Jesus said to her at the end, go and sin no more, because that's the appropriate response. It's like, look, I've been forgiven. I'll never do this again. You have my word, because you felt the pain, you felt the shame. He didn't try and cover that up at all, but he forgave her. And I'm sure she was like, never again, never. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, when we look at Jesus and people, people are the ones who will condemn us and ready to crucify us in a sense. But Jesus is the one who really has the power to do that,
Absolutely.
He is the ultimate power to do it. While the crowd is condemning us, here's Jesus who really has the power, who's not condemning us,
Absolutely.
For our act. But he wants us to change and not go and do it anymore.
Absolutely.
And that's powerful, man. Like, the one who has the power, who can execute it, chooses not to.
That's right.
But, me and the crowd,
Ready
I'm
to
standing
stone you,
there
bro.
ready
You're
to
out.
throw the
You're
first
out,
stone,
bro.
man.
Trent out. Yeah, no, that's deep, bro. That's seriously deep. Yeah, and I think that sums up the whole story. That I think also, he, in the midst of a crowd crying, crucify him. You know, Jesus had no one to speak up for him, you know, to speak up and give a voice on his defense. But here, when everyone wants her crucified, you know, he was willing to upset the crowd and stand up for this person who was going to be condemned. And I think that's a huge part of it too, that everyone loves to go with the crowd, you know, and it's difficult to stand up for someone against the crowd. But Jesus was never about pleasing the crowd. You know, he was happy to stand up for those who needed it. And I think it should draw people when you're caught in a shameful sin, the worst of the worst, you know, and I can't think of any worse than being caught in the act. Maybe murder, okay, but this is terrible, just as bad, you know. You just want to run away, you know. You want to run away because of the shame from the crowd. And here it's like, okay, sure, you might get away from the crowd, but maybe it's good to bear the shame of the crowd, but don't run away from Jesus, you know, because he's going to accept you and he will forgive you. But you should be willing to face the consequences of your actions, you know, with people. But I think it is important to not be drawn away from Jesus, because he's definitely wanting to forgive even the worst. Bro, even you, bro.
Bro, even me, man.
Even you.
Even me. If there's hope for me, there's hope for anyone.
There's hope for anyone. No, me too. Me too. Yeah, awesome.
Nice,
That's
man.
a wrap.
Yeah, man.
Sweet.